let's get to the good stuff now.
Let me. We're gonna have a change of tone here right now.
Well, people need that they need fired up feet because they haven't seen you.
This segment is titled "The Problem with the Tribalism of the Left,"
because
that's what we have on the left. We eat our own. The right, they're really great at uniting behind each other. On the left, we are fragmented. We are divided. So Tulsi, Ro Khanna, and Ayanna Pressley voted for the anti-BDS bill. They voted against it. They voted against BDS. In essence, that's what people are claiming, right? It was a House Resolution 246, but did they actually do that? So I will actually be doing a separate entire video kind of breaking this down because there's a lot of misinformation on Twitter. I got into it with a lot of people on Twitter based on this because I guess my stating facts was conflated as me defending Tulsi when that's just not the case.
Can I ask a question? What is a resolution exactly? Because people don't even understand that shit.
It's a non-binding agreement. So it's not necessarily a bill that is by law. It's non-binding. It's symbolic in nature. So a lot of people were up in arms about this symbolic non-binding resolution. And I completely understand because Palestinians are being murdered right now by Netanyahu's government. Mm-hmm. So BDS has been the solution that progressives have looked to as the solution. But I wanted to talk about how there's nuance to this. So first of all, let's go back to S1. S1 is the Senate bill back in January that Bernie Sanders and the majority of Congress people, Warren, even I think Harris, voted against it.
Sponsored by?
That one was led by Marco Rubio.
Woo!
That was a bill. Okay.
So that actually goes into law, right?
Right. So that one was focused on preventing free speech against Israel. Mm-hmm. Okay. It passed. So all of this is that a lot of people were saying, well, Bernie Sanders didn't vote for that. Actually, Bernie Sanders didn't vote for this, and neither did the majority of Democrats, because this would control free speech. This would infringe upon free speech. You should be allowed to speak against the Israeli government. So here we see a little bit of the bill, and Bernie Sanders has a statement on this that he released on January 28th of 2019. He said, "While I do not support the BDS movement, we must defend every American's constitutional right to engage in political activity. It is clear to me that this bill would violate America's First Amendment rights." And I 100% am in agreement that it would. I disagree with Bernie on BDS. I think he should support it. And a lot of you might be surprised by that because a lot of the attacks were coming at me as if I didn't support BDS. So now this is what Ro Khanna said in regards to this bill, House Resolution 246. Ro Khanna kind of said, oh, I side with Bernie on this, which in a way he does, but in a way he doesn't, and I'll explain why. So Ro Khanna's statement was, "I respect what people want to do. Nothing in the resolution infringes on anyone's First Amendment rights. I do not believe BDS, given the economic ties with Israel, is practical or would lead to peace. I will continue to speak out against new settlements and for Palestinian human rights." So that's what Ro Khanna said. And then someone asked his team, so what about the anti-BDS bill? Why not instead sign on to Omar's resolution, which, by the way, Tulsi Gabbard signed into, which affirms the right of Americans to boycott? And then Ro Khanna said, like Bernie, we don't believe or see anything that indicates that BDS will lead to peace. Our biggest commitment is to working with peace groups to recognize a two-state solution and stand up for human rights, and our record shows that. On Israel/Palestine, Roe was Betty McCollum's bill H.R. 4391 for standing up for the rights of Palestinian children. He has opposed all efforts to criminalize BDS, opposed previous legislation that has penalties, and supports individuals' rights to protest. So that's Roe's stance. What do you think about his stance, first of all?
Well, I mean, the BDS movement is a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a little bit more in depth than just on the surface and whatnot, because I think there's three phases of BDS.
So it's boycott, divestment, and sanctions.
Sanctions. But I believe that the person who initially wrote the BDS, the Palestinian supporter, also talked like the third phase is that, Israel has to leave their province and let the Palestinian kind of people go back, right?
It delegitimizes the state of Israel.
So it's not
you're not going to get the majority of anybody, but especially someone like Bernie Sanders, who is of Jewish ancestry, to delegitimize Israel. You're just not gonna. That's just not gonna happen, right? So Ayanna Pressley also made a statement on Twitter. Johnny, if you want to go to it, because she made a lot of statements.
Yeah, because she got a lot of flack for this. Ayanna.
She did, because she did divert from the squad. So Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez all voted in favor of against the anti-BDS. Yeah. So she said, there are a lot of anti-BDS bills out there that infringe on First Amendment rights at the state and federal level. In my view, 246 wasn't one of them. And she also says, what I heard resounding in my community was that voting yes on this resolution affirmed to my constituents raised in the Jewish faith Israel's right to exist, a view I share as a supporter of a two-state solution. And then she also said, let's see, she talks about... She mentions S1, that she wouldn't vote for S1, basically. And she mentions Bernie Sanders and how she agrees with him,
I'm going to read that. It says, if S1 were to come to the House floor, I would vote no.
Right.
We can call out and question the tactics of a movement, but we should never question or marginalize the lived experiences and voices of those who call out for civil rights and liberties, including the Palestinian people.
So all of their focus has been focusing on a two-state solution. So what BDS does, it throws it out the window, and it focuses on to the fact that you are going to delegitimize Israel, and it emphasizes First Amendment protection. So the good thing about this resolution, fam, that nobody wants to talk about, this resolution is the one that recognizes Palestine as its own sovereign state.
Yeah.
So,
which a lot of people weren't privy to that. They didn't even realize that was in there.
If you guys recall back, when Ilhan Omar was attacked, the House passed the bill where it was unfair. It was criminal now to criticize Israel.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
So
Chuck Schumer, right?
Obviously, our free speech was already attacked because they say that you can't even talk against Israel. You can't even say anything against Israel. So for some of them, they felt it was important to concentrate on the fact that you should be able to criticize Israel. And that's kind of their thinking. While I don't necessarily agree that just saying no to BDS is the answer, I want something better. I want better answers. I want a different plan, something that actually helps the Palestinian people, because what happens is that part of these resolutions and these bills were promoted by AIPAC.
Yeah,
so obviously it's not going to help the Palestinian people if AIPAC is having the lead on these resolutions. So I just wanted to make it clear, like, they focused on the two-state solution, on protecting free speech. But now, was this actual resolution pushed through AIPAC? It was kind of, but not really, because it was two bills. So I want to give Tulsi's take on that, because we saw Ayanna's, we saw Ro Khanna's, and they just tweeted about it. But Tulsi actually made an entire video that I want everyone to listen to,
on our Instagram,
because she kind of goes along the similar lines, but not exactly.
The freedom of speech thing you talk about.
Have sent me messages and posted on social media asking for more information about why I voted the way I did on a recent resolution talking about BDS. So I wanted to give you some background and talk to you about my commitment to defending our First Amendment rights. Nothing is more fundamental to the identity of our country than the rights and freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution. Now, I've fought to defend these freedoms both as a soldier and a congresswoman, and it's why I will continue to oppose unconstitutional legislation like S1, a bill that does seek to restrict freedom of speech by imposing legal penalties against those who participate in the BDS movement. That's why I co-sponsored HRES 496, to affirm our freedom of speech and right to protest or boycott for any cause, as well as stating opposition to any legislative efforts that seek to restrict these fundamental First Amendment rights. Now, I voted for HRES 246 because I support a two-state solution that provides for the rights of both Israel and Palestine to exist and for their people to live in peace with security in their homes. I don't believe BDS is the way to accomplish that. However, I will continue to defend those who choose to exercise their right to free speech without any threat of legal action. Now, HRES 246 does not in any way limit or hinder our First Amendment rights. In fact, it affirms every American's right to exercise free speech for or against U.S. foreign policy, as well as the right of Israeli and Palestinian people to live in safe and sovereign states, free from fear and violence, and with mutual recognition. The right to protest the actions of our government is essential if America is to truly be a free society. So no matter what our disagreements are about various political positions or choices that our government makes, we can all agree that every American should have the freedom to make those disagreements known and to protest peacefully in support of their views.
Okay, so she pretty much falls in line with Ro Khanna. She pretty much falls in line with Bernie Sanders. She pretty much falls in line with even Ayanna Pressley, right? So we think it seems like that. But why is she being singled out as if she literally just like killed like a baby goat and sacrificed him? That's what it seems like. Just people are focused on her. Bernie Sanders had, he had been presented with a resolution like this, according to his voting record, he would have voted for it the same way. So as a Bernie supporter, I'm just seeing all of this like, oh, she's canceled. Oh, like Bernie would have never. Actually, he would have, because he doesn't support BDS.
He's been
and you know
against it
what?
for a long time.
All of them need to do better on this issue, because this isn't good enough for me, dude. It's just not. Like, I'm sorry, but a two-state solution doesn't exist right now. It's just not possible, because ultimately, but is BDS possible right now in the state of our Congress? No, it's not. And so we need to find a way to attack Israel in the way that actually attacks the people doing the harm, not like the overall people. For instance, sanctions are never good for a country, even if we think they're good.
No, it's always the poor people.
The poor people end up paying the price, of course. Yeah. And so BDS, however, is a great solution that I think it could happen if we had people in there like a Bernie or a Tulsi that would be willing to listen. Even though they don't agree with it, they would be willing to at least listen. But unfortunately, right now, none of them are on BDS. Yeah. So why aren't they being all attacked equally? No, well, it's just been Tulsi, right?
Remember when Tulsi, we went to Santa Monica and it was just like, this is the most complicated issue out there. Well, first of all, it's really, really tough.
It's very complicated.
The first question somebody had, they were like, oh, what do you think about the Palestine? And I was like, oh, softball for you, Tulsi. She looked over and chuckled and then went back to answer the question, because it is so complicated. It's just not on the surface. It's rabbit holes that you got to go down to. You got to understand BDS. There's a reason why Bernie Sanders is anti-BDS, because it might sound like good saying boycott, divest, and sanction and stuff like that, but sanctions are never good, because who pays for the sanctions? The poor people. You know what I'm saying? The lower to middle class people, the middle to lower class people. They're the ones who are going to be suffering and hitting it on the chin. So we got to find other solutions, and this is the most complicated situation.
And a lot of people say a two-state solution isn't possible because Israel has all the power, and they're never going to just agree to be fair with the Palestinians. But then to try to delegitimize Israel is also not going to work, because you're going to have the people who are the Jewish groups who feel like that's anti-Semitic. I mean, Bernie Sanders did an interview, and I'm not going to play it this time, but I will in my video, where he was interviewed by a woman, and he thinks that BDS has anti-Semitic tropes within it. So we can't just like look at one side. And unfortunately, the Palestinian people are hurting while we're all quarreling over this situation, because while we were all focused on this non-binding symbolic resolution and how we're going to cancel Ro Khanna, Ayanna Pressley, and Tulsi Gabbard, what actually passed was far worse. So this bill is actually HR, it's actually a resolution, 1837, the United States Israeli Corporation Enhancement and Regional Securities Act. So this is an act that passed the House vote and then was received in the Senate. And This is the one where the AIPAC component lies. This one was the one that AIPAC was cheering for. So when they passed all of these together, the people were like, see, this helps. This is funneled by AIPAC. This is the one that was actually AIPAC targeted. Had 292 co-sponsors. Let me list the names of the people who co-sponsored this. Mike Levin, Connor Lamb, Ted Lieu, Debbie Wasserman-Schultz, Eric Swalwell, Ro Khanna, Jim Acosta,
of course,
Katie Porter,
yes,
Katie Hill,
it's Katie Schill,
and Tony Cardenas.
Yeah, Katie Porter and Katie Schill are very much AIPAC loyalists.
And a lot of these people who don't know the politics here in California, so you're excused, have been talking about Katie Porter and Katie Hill being progressive. No, Pasta and I followed those races closely. They are not progressives.
No.
Just because they give some good speeches on C-SPAN doesn't make them progressive.
Yeah.
So Tulsi did not vote for this. How did she not vote for this? So whenever someone co-sponsors a bill, it is automatically a yay vote. Those who do not are a nay vote. So they allowed it to go to a voice vote because it's irrelevant. Only one person's had actually did a voice vote because it doesn't matter because they had 200 and plus almost 300, 292 co-sponsors. So she didn't vote for this. And this bill does something far worse. So this bill increases military assistance to Israel with no oversight. Zero. Nil.
Zips.
So that's what I was saying. BDS is great and we need to do that. But what we need to focus on is how the Israelis are doing this to the Palestinians. They're doing this through the weapons, to having this army that targets the Palestinians. So we're not really focusing on that. And that's the one thing we need to focus on. And that's what this freaking thing does. It has been zero mentions on it on the mainstream media, zero mentions on it in even outside of Nico House and Jimmy Dore have talked about how horrible this is. So let me kind of go through here, Johnny. This has it's called the Enhanced Cooperation between the U.S. and Israel. So it just gives you a little overview about how we're going to cooperate with Israel for research and development, energy, cooperation on cybersecurity.
Yeah. Which is also news on that right now.
Yeah.
The NSA just hired somebody, I think, from Israel to be the head of their cybersecurity. I have to look into that. Somebody sent me an article. I haven't got the chance to get into it.
So this one right here. So, in general, the Secretary of Defense, upon request of the Ministry of Defense of Israel, and with the Secretary of State, is authorized to carry out research, development, test, and evaluation activities on a joint basis with Israel to establish directed energy capabilities that address threats to the United States, deployed forces of the United States or Israel, and it protects sensitive information in a manner that protects sensitive information in the national security interests of the United States and the national security interests of Israel. So, on the next one, the statement of policy. It is the policy of the United States to provide assistance to the government of Israel in order to help enable Israel to defend itself by itself and develop long-term capacity, primarily through the acquisition of advanced capabilities that are available from the United States. And so overall, Section 203, contingency plans to provide Israel with necessary defense articles and services. And then finally, in general, upon receiving information that Israel is under an existing or imminent threat of military attack, the president may waive the requirements of this act and direct the immediate transfer to Israel of such defense articles or the services the president determines to be necessary to assist Israel in its defense against such a threat. Amounts obligated or expended to carry out this paragraph shall not be subject to any limitation in law or provision by any bilateral agreement relating to the amount of the United States assistance authority to be made available to Israel. As soon as practicable after a transfer of defense articles or services pursuant to the authority provided by paragraph 1, the president shall provide a notification in writing to Congress of the details of such transfer. So after he does it, then he has to provide...
Here's the receipt.
The receipt for
There
it,
you
but
go.
Only after he does it. This is what you should all be outraged about. This.
Here's your receipt, madam.
Thank you. And you know, all of those people, all of those names that I listed... Those people, maybe you have a right to cancel those people because this is directly what hurts the Palestinian people, not a non-binding resolution. And I'm not defending that vote because I probably would have abstained from that vote. but it does have some good as far as the freedom of speech, because that is not protected since the proceedings against Ilhan Omar, and since Congress did pass that we can't speak out against Israel. So now at least Palestinians are recognized as a sovereign state, and at least our speech against Israel is protected. Okay, but then they went and did this, and I saw zero outrage
Nothing.
about this.
No.
Where are all the people canceling Mike Levin, Katie Porter, Katie Hill?
Yeah.
I mean, I expected from people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Ro Khanna. I mean, seriously?
But it was a resolution too. Is that why he did it? Maybe because another resolution.
I think there are ties to him in AIPAC, and I can't really 100% say that for sure. But I mean, I've been doing a little bit of research, and I really want to ask him, like, why are you voting for this? Because I don't have as much of a problem with him voting for the first one, but for this, that is direct money and direct aid for Israel to literally bomb Palestinians.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So the same
and no
day,
oversight too.
no oversight.
No,
They can
no
do
oversight.
whatever they want. And not only that, Trump can do whatever he wants. This
hand
is
you the receipt.
a president. You're just literally giving Trump the toys to go and do this. And Netanyahu. So the same day this all passed, the House Foreign Relations Committee passed another bill. That's why so many people were confused, because there's so much going on.
Yes.
HR 1850. So the second one, Pasto, was an act. This one is a bill.
Okay.
It's just titled HR 1850. So this is the Palestinian International Terrorism Support Prevention Act of 2009. I think we need to switch the Palestinian name to Israeli, because they are the ones terrorizing people, by the way. And it passed, and it went to the Senate. Tulsi Gabbard, again, is not a co-sponsor of this, and you can check that out for yourself. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is, though.
No.
Is nobody's surprised by that. So the same time they passed that, this whole week, Israel demolished 70 plus apartments on Palestinian-owned land. 600 Palestinians lost their homes. And on Monday, hundreds of Israeli troops descended on a village in the outskirts of East Jerusalem with heavy bulldozers at 4 a.m. in the morning, rousing people from their beds.
You have a little clip here?
I do.
Dude, I saw this on Rupley. It is tough, man. They just go in there and they just freaking start demolishing. Can you imagine just being thrown out of your home?
Yeah.
Terrible.
The families living in those apartments were only allowed to grab a few of their belongings as they were rushed out of their buildings in the middle of the morning to watch their homes being demolished in front of their eyes. The Israeli Supreme Court allowed the demolitions to take place after the residents lost their case. But the apartments were on Palestinian land. The Israeli government said it was too close to the burial wall that was illegally put on Palestinian land in the first place. On Sunday, people gathered to protest that demolition, against the demolition of those buildings. Israeli forces attacked those protesters, injured the journalists. The protesters did not imagine that in less than 24 hours, the houses would already be gone. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shahida responded this way.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine just being woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning, dragged out of your house, grab a few, and they just fucking knock it down. Sorry for cursing again, but they just knock it down. You can see it. And within 24 hours, all the houses are gone. 600 Palestinians are removed from their households and destroyed. And where do they go, fam? Where do they go? And Israel's been doing this stuff, expanding their territory for a long time. That's why when it comes to these BDS votes and these resolutions and these acts, it's so much things going on. It's so hard. It's so hard to make a stance on it. And it's going to be one of the biggest issues for a long time.
And that's why I've been pro BDS, because I don't see a two-state solution being viable, though, when this is happening. So I believe Tulsi has to do better. I believe Bernie Sanders has to do better. I believe every single candidate on that stage, none of them are there on BDS. And you know what? And I get it, and I get why, because it is a complex issue, like Pasta says.
It's
You can't just erase Israel from existence. But what they're doing, what not the people of Israel, but what the government of Israel, what Netanyahu's doing to these people, is murder. It is. I mean, they're completely decimating the population of Palestinians. It is apartheid. You can call it whatever it is. That's what it is. That's why people are emotional about it. And I get it, and I completely get it. But you cannot conflate that with what those those resolutions and those bills and that act actually did. And you can't just react emotionally without understanding every single reasoning and why people are doing that. So that's why I wanted to talk about this, and I'm going to do an entire video because this takes up a lot of time.
But wait a second. With all these things going on, with the Promesa Act coming back into play, with the Monocue coming back into play, then the anti-BDS, which boycott, divest, and sanction, which we hate, but, you know, all this stuff happened. There was something else. There was still another last piece of information from Tulsi's crazy week.
Right. So people were on Twitter again shouting out, Tulsi voted for the defense budget. How dare the anti-war candidate vote for the defense budget? So what about this defense bill, right? So the budget bill that was passed was not the defense bill. As part of the Appropriations and Authorizations Bill, Tulsi Gabbard included the Stop Arming Terrorists Act. She did not vote for the FY20 NDAA because it passed in the House and it will go to the Senate. So that had already passed. It was voted on prior. So all of these people that have been talking about, that Tulsi did this or that, are entirely wrong. So
and I think we got to talk about that too, because you understand, people don't understand that, like, if you vote against the defense bill, there is a bunch of people, independents to Republicans, that will never support you because they believe you're not supporting the troops. So it's not just saying no to the funds that go, and that's why she said present when she got her verbiage in there. Is because that you don't want to take away money from the troops. If we cut the defense bill, what are the Republicans going to do? They're going to still make sure their contractors get money, and the troops are going to have to pay the price. So she wants to make sure that the money is allocated differently, not just cut the bill itself, because we have all these people.
But you're right. But she didn't. It's not the same thing because she didn't vote for it. So
that's what I'm saying. She
budget,
she voted present.
The budget bill that was passed yesterday is not the NDAA. So I want to clarify that. So the HR 2500 National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2020. That's the one we're talking about.
Yes, HR.
This was a vote to pass HR 2500 in the House. The federal budget process occurs in two stages, the appropriations and the authorizations. This is an authorization bill. That's the one she voted for, which directs how federal funds should or should not be used. It does not set the overall spending limits, however, which are the subject of the appropriations bill. Authorizations are typically made for single fiscal year, October 1st through September 30th of the next year, but are often renewed in subsequent law. So here are the votes.
51% aye.
51 to 45. And then we also have what she did. So she voted for the Stop Arming. She included her Stop Arming Terrorist
got the language
Act
in there
because she's been pushing this for a while. So she was able to secure the inclusion of the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act that was passed that morning. This would actually prohibit the use of taxpayer funds to provide weapons or any form of support to Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State of Iraq, in Syria, the Sham, any individual group associated with these organizations, or any entity the Secretary of Defense determines may trade or sell arms to terrorist organizations. So the Secretary of Defense, that could include Israel as well. Mm-hmm. So here is exactly what that means. So in these provisions, this is what is included. A statement that nothing in the bill, underlying or in a future amendment, shall be misconstrued as an authorization to use military force against Iran or Venezuela. No more presidential wars, making it an impeachable offense to unilaterally start a war without the authorization of Congress. Mm-hmm. Stop Arming Terrorists Act. No DOD funds can be used to indirectly to terrorist groups or provide support for any entity that provides support to terrorist groups, limiting the use of law-yield nuclear weapons, implementing a no first use policy, more DOD and Office of the Director of National Intelligence transparency on civilian casualties on targeted attacks through reports to Congress and the American people.
Yes, it is.
A 3.1% raise for service members. So, and a Tenants' Bill of Rights improving the quality of housing, increased funding for education.
And healthcare. Yeah. She kind of slipped that in there too as well, and that's really good. So, it's important.
Yeah, and I think I got that little part from Sophia, the Libertarian Socialist, on Twitter. It's in the bill itself, but she kind of just outlined it out for us to see. AOC, Tulsi, Rashida Tlaib, and Ro Khanna voted for that part. the same way that Tulsi did, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ro Khanna, but they all voted for the positive aspects of the legislation. They, instead of supporting the negative against the negative aspects. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, they supported the positive parts of this bill instead of voting against the negative.
Yeah.
So this resolution challenged the notion that the states can that the states can basically that they can lie about BDS, basically. So I think it's important that we look to what these resolutions are saying, especially people who have social media followings or are trying to do independent media, that we need to start reading this and start informing people. And for people who are on Twitter to just stop acting like they can just automatically go and have a reaction without reading any of this, because then you're just relying on hearsay. You're not really relying on something that is actually valid.
Well, also too, let's not forget, it's a double-edged sword. Really, it is. A lot of these resolutions, they put in verbiage and language, they put a poison pill in there that you have to swallow it one way or the other.
Yeah.
You know, and like I said, I think Tulsi has been beyond great when it comes to explaining her position, holding down her position, voting her conscience, and you know where she's coming from. You know, she doesn't dilute anything. She comes forward, hey, you didn't like this vote, but let me tell you why. It was an infringe on freedom of speech, and that's why I voted this way. Or this is what I included in this bill, and I just said present, or, you know what I'm saying? She's very conscious. She's aware of what's going on, and because of her ideology, character, I trust her, and that's why I stand behind Tulsi.
And let's go back to the crime bill. When Bernie Sanders voted for the crime bill, a lot of his attackers like to go and point that out. How dare he vote for the crime bill? He shouldn't have done that, and maybe he shouldn't have done it. But there was a clause in there that protected women. He wasn't going to let that go. He voted for the positive in that horrible bill instead of focusing on all the negative, because it was going to pass anyway.
Yeah.
And that's something that we as people outside of politics don't always understand. We think like, no, you're just going to go in there and vote every single ideal that you have. But that's just not how it works there when you're working with all these people. And I think we need to start understanding that and start kind of working towards having a more nuanced view on things. And while I support BDS and I would have abstained from that vote, I still think that I can understand where they were coming from. What I don't stand for is giving Israel unilateral ability to go and bomb Palestinians with the last bill that they passed, that all of these people, all of these so-called progressives supported. That directly affects Israel or Palestinians far more than what the non-binding resolution did.
And I think also too, we talk about the Brady bill when they kind of get on Bernie for that, but there was a ban of assault weapons, and he told his people and his constituents, I will do what I need to do to get the ban of assault weapons passed through Congress. And that's why he voted for that bill, because he voted for the positive aspect, not the rest of the stuff.
And he didn't want to punish the gun shop owners who had nothing to do with it.
And that now Joe Biden has kind of taken that position, I think, to be the anti-Bernie guy, the opposite in the last one. And he even said it's not the NRA, it's the distributors. It's like, where are you from, pal? Fam, I'm going to throw some shot